that temperature is very, very confusing to our bees. On a lot of the Facebook and networking pages, everyone was seeing their bees out flying and so on. They'd broken cluster, they were confused. And then last weekend we had, and overnight in New Year's, we had like -15. So this type of climate is extremely hard on our bees. So basically, I'm just clicking. My message here, this picture I have is from a few years ago. It happens to be one of our apiaries in Muskoka, and you can see all the snow, and snow was insulation for the bees. But this year,
Marian, we're just seeing the front page. Did you want to start your presentation and then we'll see the first one? We're just seeing your introduction one.
Okay. So yeah, perfect. So you can see here that this is one of our apiaries up in the cottage country in Muskoka, and this was a few years ago, and this is all the snow that's insulating factors. But this year there's not a lot of snow up there, at least not. It comes and it goes, and we just had ice that was supposedly on our lake and frozen, and then it was off again, and now apparently it's frozen again. So very, very variable climate. So my message for January is basically let the bees be bees. If there is snow, keep your entranceways of the hives clear. Make sure that the lids are on properly on the top. On a mild sunny day, you may see those bees doing cleansing flights. You can listen to your bees with a stethoscope or put your ears by the hive itself, but don't open the top, just leave them. And if you can kind of listen around, if you can kind of tap a little bit on the side, if you don't hear them, they might sort of waken up or hear buzzing a bit. Remember to register your hives with OMAFRA. It's very important to do that. Register your hives with the OBA. It's time to do that again this year. And consider buying the optional liability insurance. Take inventory of equipment, repair any damaged equipment, make some assessments of what you may need for your needs in the spring of this 2022, and think about ordering or getting organized to do so. Order your nukes. I'm hearing that nukes, I don't know what the situation with nukes are going to be this year, but it's good to start thinking about nukes, and if you want to put an order in so that they will be available for you later in the year. Consider doing some reading about bees and bee yard tasks as a refresher. And for those that are new, the Tech Transfer Center, part of the OBA, has really a good course there, which is very reasonable. It's $85, and there's two parts to it. It's Apiology 101, and the first part is basic principles of beekeeping, and it's divided into chapters. And they actually have audio, so you can go through the chapters. It's a 2-week window when you do that course. And then they have a second part, which is the integrated pest management, which is really important. And I know our club this year is going to really be focusing on integrated pest management, particularly varroa mite monitoring. So, it would be, if you are a new beekeeper considering to be a beekeeper, it would be a great idea to take that course. And any information on that is on the Ontario Beekeepers Association website. So the next thing is just to let you know a little update about our project, the UTBA beekeeping calendar. It is the project has been launched. Our team is Michelle, who's doing floral sources, Alain, who is doing the bees, what bees are doing in the hive and bee yard tasks, Damien, which is climate changes, particularly with respect to temperature, minimum maximum temperatures for opening hives and so on, and closing hives. We also have a volunteer designer, which is absolutely fantastic for designing our calendar. We've had 2 meetings so far with excellent progress, and we have a Google Drive where we all share information. Our next team meeting is January the 6th, and basically the calendar will be a monthly summary of what the bees are doing in the hive, be your tasks, guidance on the importance of temperatures when opening and closing hives, and the floral sources that are specific to Toronto. And the goal is to have this calendar ready and posted on our website for the 2022 beekeeping season, as it's a useful tool for our members for years to come. And so, Lucy, back to you. Okay.
Thanks, Marian. Okay, that's great. And I'm really looking forward to that calendar. I think it's going to be great, a very useful tool for us all to have. So we're all about wax tonight. We're going to be talking about a couple of different methods of wax rendering. Michelle will start with her sous-vide method, and then we'll go into a slow cooker method. And then we'll go to the main event, which is candle making. So we're excited about that. So go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, so I happened to own a sous vide machine, which is a device that holds water at preset temperatures. And I use it for cooking, and I use it to to prepare, excuse me, all different kinds of meats. It cooks them to preset temperatures, and I also use it to make yogurt and all that kind of stuff. So in the July 2020 OBA, Ontario Beekeepers Association journal, there was an article on how to render wax with a sous vide. And I thought, hey, I have one of those. I'm going to give it a try. So there I started. Uno momento here. It went too far. There we are. Okay, so this is a photograph. It's a little bit of a busy photo. So what you can see there is a standard issue Coleman cooler. And inside the Coleman cooler, there's my sous vide machine on the left, which has the little digital display. Then there's a bucket in the center, which has a combination of wax and water, because you need to have a method to transfer the heat to the wax to melt it. So it's wax and water. And then on the outside of the bucket, inside the cooler, is just regular white, regular water. And so the equipment that you need to have a pail with a filter that fits. So that's a 5-gallon pail, like you would use for honey. And then you need to have, a cooler that you can fit it into, or a container. It could just be as simple as a Rubbermaid bin, doesn't be a cooler. And then the sous vide machine. Then what you need to do is heat the outside water in the cooler to at least 167, and that is the temperature at which wax is going to melt. And you don't want to go over that, and this will take quite a while to do, because I'm using plastic. If I was using a metal bucket, it would go much faster, because the heat transference through metal is much better than the heat transference through plastic. But I chose this because you need to put in one of those 5-gallon honey filters inside. And what you need to do is make sure that there's headroom for that filter inside the bucket. So you can't put too much water and wax in. You have to make sure you can push that filter right down and that it doesn't touch the level of water and wax. So then once you run it, it probably took 6 or 7 hours, but you can kind of walk away from it. You don't have to attend to it. And then all of the wax inside was melted with the water. So in this photograph, you can see, well, there's one in just a sec. Let me check to see if oh no, that's it. Okay, so what happened is all of the wax was melted, and the next step is to purify it, or is to filter it out. So the way that you filter it out here is kind of, think of like reverse. So the filter here is holding down all of the crud, and by adding boiling water through it, when you add the boiling water, the wax filters itself through the honey filter and floats up. So all the crud gets pushed and left behind. This is why it's really important that you were able to get that honey filter like really into the pail, and that there wasn't too much wax. So you can only use like a certain amount, and you got to kind of figure out the amount of wax you can use on your own. So basically we pour the boiling water in, and when you pour the boiling water in, all the wax floats up and all the crud stays at the bottom. So when you see this, you're just like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Because so far it really hasn't been dirty. Like I don't have schmutz all over my hands. I don't have stuff all over the floor. But the problem is you have to make sure you don't overfill it. Because one time when I did this, I added too much wax, and like it's all came out the sides and all this kind of stuff. Of course, when you cool down, you can just clean it up. But anyways, there we are. The wax has completely come through that honey filter and cools. And then basically you just pick it up, and then your honey is perfectly clean on both sides. And I just used a little paring knife to release it from the edge of the filter, and that was it. So this was like I said, this wasn't original. It was in the OBA July, August 2020, but I just wanted to show everybody that I tried it and it worked. And yeah, I really liked it. And so far, this is my #1 way to render wax, because the wax is so clean when it comes through. Like you only have to do it once, basically, and you don't have to run it through multiple times, but it does require a sous vide. It is a little fussy in that you have to estimate your quantities well, because if you put, if you have too much wax in it and you add the boiling water and all of the wax doesn't rise above the filter, then it kind of gets stuck and you have to remelt it and do it again. But I thought that everybody liked to see that. So it was really nice way of using that OBA method that was mentioned in the journal. And that's my contribution.
Hey, that's awesome. Okay, and now it's me. So I'm sharing my screen. I've got my computer guru here. I need you. Okay, there we go. This is my untechnical self here, so I have to have help. Again, it's not good. Okay, sorry, technical difficulties. I can just scroll through them. That's good for me.
You just need to start the presentation.
Where do I do that?
Start from beginning.
It's because it's up here.
Oh, she can't see it because my bar is. Oh, there we go.
It's behind here.
I know it's behind my Zoom thing. Okay, you know what? I can just scroll through them. You're gonna see my whole screen here. Sorry.
Again. Stop sharing. It's gonna say.
Just click on slideshow, and then when you click on slideshow, you'll be able to click on start from beginning.
My Zoom bar is right over all of that. That's okay.
Here.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we go. So this is my little slow cooker that I bought at Value Village. It was a little bit beat up. It's more beat up now that I've used it to do wax. So this is a great and cheap way to start your wax rendering. I normally just put about 1/3 of water in there. It depends kind of how much wax I'm going to be doing, and because I was just doing my end of the year bit, I didn't have a lot of wax. So I add about a third of the thing of water. I had used this cheesecloth at the end of my last wax rendering. So you can see some of the debris on top. And I just thought I would use it to start this batch again. And then depending on how dirty it came out, I could do another filter on it. So I just attach it with some twine around there. I tried elastics, but that wasn't very smart because they melted. So twine it is. And then this was, I have one of the metal filters for my honey. So that sat quite a long time waiting for me to get to it. But surprisingly, there was still a lot of honey in the bottom of it. So this is just my drained wax cappings. And then I just loaded them on top of the cheesecloth. So kind of as much as I could get in there, pop the lid on it. And I actually put it at high. So if anybody, the temperature thing, I'm not sure if that's the best thing to do. I was trying to do this as quickly as possible yesterday. So I did put it on high. And this was in the process of it melting. So you can see it kind of working. The whole thing with a slow cooker is you're not supposed to take the lid off because it'll bring the temperature down. So I just left the lid on, but just to show you in the process of melting. This is an hour and a half in because I had my slow cooker on high. So you can see how it's all drained through and there's some debris in there. And then it was so there you go. You can see all the debris from my wax cappings there that are left on the cheesecloth. And then it was so beautifully cold yesterday. I just stuck it outside in the snow and that's how it comes up. So it's really a very easy process to do. You can see this is the liquid now that's down in the bottom. So everything's come through. I flipped the disc over. So this is the bottom side of the disc. And I was surprised, actually, this is pretty clean right off the bat because I've had some stuff that's come out dirtier. And what I do is I just,
okay, come on up.
I'll run it through again. And that's the top of the disc there. So it looks pretty similar to Michelle's there. But a really simple way to render wax and not messy at all. And it, again, hobby beekeepers, the first time I did this, I got quite a thick disc of wax, but I only have, I think I had 6 or 7 hives this year, so not a lot. So depending on your hives, I think that Michelle's way, it would be a better way if you had more hives than that to do it. So that was my wax rendering there for you. Does anybody have any questions about wax rendering, or Michelle, do you want to add, or Aline, things that you do that's a little bit different from what we just saw here?
So I've used a crock pot 2 different ways. So sometimes if I have a really small amount of wax, what I do is I take the rinsed wax, and instead of you loaded yours up on a cheesecloth, sometimes I take like a woman's knee-high stocking, and I stuff it with the wax, and then I tie it up with an elastic band. And so it kind of looks like a sausage. And then I put that in the boiling water in the crock pot. And then once all the wax has all melted out, then I pull out the stocking, which has all the debris and everything in it. And then I let it cool. So I've done that using a slow cooker. And I've also done it where I've taken a coffee filter, a large basket coffee filter, put the wax in the middle, and then I've put another coffee filter over top and sewn it up. I actually did it on a sewing machine. I don't know. You probably just do it by hand, whatever. You could probably staple it. And then I cooked the coffee filter kind of like a wax tea bag. And then I pulled that out, and it's worked well. But I think your method actually tops them all. So thank you for showing me that, because that looks fabulous. I'm definitely going to try that.
It's just fast and easy. That's what I'm all about, which is not good in beekeeping, I guess. But okay, we are not too far along here, so I think we're just going to jump right into Dana if you're ready to go. And we're excited to learn all about candle making.
Cool. I hope you guys enjoy it. So this is basically taken from what we do for the workshops at Dancing Bee. I guess I'll introduce myself first. So my name is Dana.
Sorry, Dana. Can I jump in and do that for you? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I asked you to do this, and you did me such a great one, and then I completely lost you there.
It's all good. It's all good.
Usually we take a little break. Does anybody need a break, by the way? before we go to the main thing? No? Sorry. Okay, here we go. Sorry, Dana. This is all backwards stuff here.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so Dana is an environmental biologist, beekeeper, and enthusiast of all things bee and pollinator related. Her passion has always been the environment, and one of her earliest memories from grade 5 was when she wrote a speech on acid rain. It was then she knew she had to help make the world a better place and share that passion with others. The desire led her to an honors BS in environmental biology from Trent University and the startup of her business, Nature's Web. She began as an eco gardener and landscaper, helping people plan, plant, and maintain their gardens as responsibly as possible. As sometimes happens, life circumstances change, and some of her dreams and plans got put on hold. She had a child, and other responsibilities kind of took over. She adapted her business so she could do more from home, and it involved crocheting, knitting, upcycling projects to help support her family while dreaming about getting back to the environment. Then a number of years ago, an opportunity came to meet a beekeeper and take an intro to beekeeping course. She jumped at the opportunity, took the courses offered, and then purchased her first 2 nukes. She was scared, me too. But once they came, she did her first installations and inspections, and she was hooked. And she was finally doing what she'd been waiting for. She expanded her business to include all things bee related, including making products with beeswax, including candles, soaps, lotions, and beeswax wraps. Over the years, she's increased her number of beehives, as well as her desire to share her knowledge and experience. Today, she is following her dream of being a beekeeper, but also she's employed at one of the largest and best sources of all things bee related in Canada, Dancing Bee Equipment in Port Hope, Ontario. At Dancing Bee, she gets to reach out to people through many types of workshops and tours, and her team and her host many levels of not only beekeeping workshops, but also beeswax candle making and more. And she loves to bring joy and love to all things bee to people of all ages. And I was so lucky because I dropped by Dancing Bee, and that's where I kind of saw you getting ready for a workshop and then grabbed you. So I'm so glad that you agreed to do this.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
It sounds so weird when I hear you say all that. But thank you very much. I know I wrote it, so it's all
No,
good.
but you know what? It was great because it was like, that's your story, right?
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, it's been a long journey, and we all have our journeys. And I mean, for the longest time, I wanted to raise, beneficial insects, and I tried butterflies. So I mean, there's been a lot of steps along the way for the journey. So here, and this is where I'm at right now, which is fabulous. So I enjoy doing this, and I'm, Zoom is different, but we'll make it work. And I hope that the workshop is pretty good. Then I can't wait until we can have everybody in person, or we can travel out to people again, and it'll be great. So thank you very much, Lucy, and I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to presenting for you. So like I said, this is basically what I've done is sort of just a basic of what we do at the workshop, obviously without the hands-on stuff. I mean, I love doing it. I'm by no means like the expert to know everything. I enjoyed watching everybody's rendering, how they rendered. The Sous-Vide was new. I think that was really cool. I do a lot of mine with the crock pot. And I don't know, I think you all might know John McFarlane, who's another beekeeper at Dancing Bee. He always teases me because I do the slow cooker method, but I never put the cheesecloth in. I just put my cappings in with the water, and then I heat it up, melts, and then when it cools down, my wax is on top, and I just pull it out, and everything's on the bottom. But I have to filter it again. So maybe I should add the cheesecloth to it. It might be easier. I don't know. So I just stuff everything in all at once. But that's just me. So everybody has a different way of doing it. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. So I have, we can do the slideshow. Make sure it's one up. Did I share it or is it, did I just, I don't think I shared it yet. Hold on one second. I gotta go back to Zoom. Sorry, I have to click share screen first before I do that. Sure. There we go. Now, oops. All right, now I can do this. I think I'm getting the hang of it. There's enough Zooms that we've been doing, kind of going. All right, so we presenting the Dancing Bee Beeswax and Candles workshop. So I'm gonna briefly talk about the history of beeswax and beeswax candles, some beeswax chemistry, which is the difference between beeswax and other waxes, benefits of beeswax candles, how to choose a wick, and some frequently asked questions. All right. Oh, there we go. So there's the topics. So beeswax is an amazing product of the beehive. As we all know, the bees produce wax from their own bodies to build comb up from nothing. The comb serves as a home, a nursery, and food storage. And over hundreds of thousands of years, bees have figured out the most efficient way to build the optimal storage. By using a hexagon, bees can store the most amount of honey or pollen while using the least amount of wax. This also serves as the perfect spot for bees to undergo the metamorphosis from egg to bee. So what is beeswax? In the most simple terms, it is a wax produced by bees of the genus Apis. Beeswax consists of at least 284 different compounds, mainly a variety of long chain alkynes, acids, esters, polyesters, and hydroxyesters. But the exact composition of beeswax varies with location, just like the exact composition of honey will vary by location. It's all very dependent on what the flowers are. Specifically, it is wax secreted from 8 wax-producing glands on a worker bee's abdomen. It is secreted in scales that look like small mica flakes. They are clear, colorless, tasteless, and very brittle. Typically, it's the younger bees when they're between the ages of 12 and 20 days old. As a bee grows older and starts to gather nectar and pollen, these glands will atrophy as they are no longer used. This doesn't mean that they lose the ability to produce the wax completely, as when they swarm or they need to rebuild quickly, the majority of the workers will produce wax no matter their age. This allows the comb to be built quickly in order to give the queen a place to lay her eggs and somewhere for them to store their food. Sorry, just my dog. Hold on one second. I'm just going to text my daughter to put my dog outside. Oops. Hopefully she'll be quiet. Okay. Just a minute, Sally. Joys of Zoom at home. Okay, so build the wax into honeycomb. The bees will hang together in strings, often called festooning. As the wax is extruded, it's passed between the legs and the mouths of the bees to form a chain, being chewed and molded into shape along the way. This wax is then used to make the well-known hexagon shape of the honeycomb. This process is what starts to give the beeswax its color and opacity. The color is also dependent on what the type of nectar is and the pollen the bees are bringing into the hive and consuming. It takes approximately 1,100 scales to make 1 gram of wax, and approximately 12 hours for one bee to make 8 scales. In a lifetime, bees fly up to 5,000 miles and pollinate 2 million flowers to produce a 1/4 pound of wax. If there's an adequate supply of food and the temperature within the hive is between 33 degrees Celsius and 36 degrees Celsius, which is about 91 Fahrenheit and 97 Fahrenheit, worker bees can create a wax on demand. They create the correct temperature on cooler days by clustering around the wax-producing bees when they're building comb. So if it's warm enough, they can just produce it, but if they're too cold, they will cluster around them to build the comb. So it's kind of nice that they make sure that the builders are nice and warm. Beeswax production is very costly for bees, though. It takes about 8.4 pounds of honey to create 1 pound of wax. So this is the honey that can be used to feed non-foraging bees or to be saved for when the nectar flow slows or stops at times of dearth, like we've just had in December, and the weather's just been crazy. Due to this, the bees will often take wax from one area where it's not needed and place it to where it is needed. The redistribution of beeswaxes also contributes to the coloration of the wax, with the older wax becoming darker and darker. This recycled wax could have been used for brood honey and could contain cocoon remains or propolis pollen. Most of the wax that is commercially available is made from what beekeepers call cappings. This is the wax taken off the top of the honey super frames before it is spun out. Beekeepers will then put the empty honeycomb back into the hive to save the bees some work for next time. So the history of beeswax. The relationship between bees and humans dates back thousands and thousands of years. When the hunter-gatherers, humans had nothing but a long stick and a lot of courage. The American Bee Journal reports that scientists have evidence of humans using beeswax and can be seen in Anatolia as far back as 7000 BCE, which is before current era. These humans would knock down the hives with a long stick and run away. I always giggle because it always kills me to think about these poor people way back then. I don't even know how they would have discovered this stuff. Returning later when it was deemed safe enough to gather what was inside. Later, they discovered that a burning stick could help subdue the bees, which in turn makes harvesting a little bit easier. The history of the use of beeswax is easier to determine with the ancient Egyptians. They recognized the value of beeswax and used it in the mummification and embalming processes. They also used it to seal coffins and to make them airtight, further preserving the bodies. The ancient Egyptians also used beeswax to preserve their writings on papyrus and cave paintings, which is why they're often so easily read today, more than 2,000 years later. They also recognize the importance of beeswax for human health, as there is evidence of beeswax in their medicine formulations dating back to 1500 BCE. Ancient jewelers and artisans used wax casting technique where they would sculpt a mold out of beeswax and then coat that mold in clay. They would then harden the clay with heat, which would in turn melt the beeswax on the inside, leaving the clay shell that was a perfect replica of the wax sculpture. So then they would pour molten metal into the clay shell to make the final product. Ancient Egyptian priests also made effigies out of beeswax to resemble their enemies before ritually destroying the figure. Ancient Egyptians would use beeswax, tallow, or other ingredients as a precursor to today's solid perfumes and creams, although they weren't sold as perfumes, but for medicinal use. The Chinese also have recognized and used beeswax for thousands of years. About 2,000 years ago, one of China's most famous books on medicine, the Shenong Book of Herbs, praised beeswax for its beneficial influence on blood and energy systems, and attributed beeswax with the beauty enhancement and anti-aging properties. Beeswax was also recognized as an important ingredient for wound treatment. Beeswax candles were already used by the ancient Egyptians, ancient Greeks, and in Rome and China. They have also been used in European churches since the beginning of Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church only allowed beeswax candles to be used in the church, and that law is still valid today. However, the beeswax candles are no longer required to be 100% beeswax, as long as they have some beeswax in them. By the 11th century, the churches were using large amounts of candles and were able to maintain this by having their own apiaries in the monastery. So you can see these nuns beekeeping. So beeswax chemistry. So there's different types of commonly used candles. We all know paraffin is one type. Now, paraffin is very much less expensive than beeswax, and there are several reasons why. It is, first of all, it's created from the black sludge. It's the black sludge byproduct from refining petroleum, which is basically fuel. It tends to smoke. It releases carcinogenic chemicals, which are blended, textured, colored, and scented, and then they're blended with other carcinogenic scents, textures, colors, and different chemicals. When they burn, they will coat the walls, your furniture, and your lungs. So it's like when you smoke and you see the yellow. If you burn a lot of paraffin candles, it'll be the same thing. They also, when they're burnt, they release chemicals such as benzene, toluene, and soot into the air. They also have a much lower melting point than beeswax does. So soy candles is also another type of very common candle. It's made from the hydrogenated soybean oil, which is the same thing that they make really tofu from. So it's basically the same idea. slightly different. Same by itself, it isn't unhealthy, but there are no benefits either. Although there are concerns that soy wax does not stand by itself, so they will often add other things to it to make it more solid and stiff, which more often than not is paraffin wax, stearic acid, and other carcinogenic ingredients. And then they also add fragrances, which also have a lot of different chemicals. Soy wax has a lower melting point as well. It's often bleached and deodorized to make it white, and the flame will burn white and cool, sort of similar to fluorescent lights and cell phones, which isn't always good for your eyes and stuff like that. So beeswax is better than soy or paraffin. We all think so. We all know so, right? But it's actually a scientific fact. So soy candles, like I said before, they're on the light spectrum. It's like a blue light that you get from your phone, which is not a really great light for your eyes. Soy wax goes rancid without preservative. Soy products are also commonly genetically modified and bleached and hydrogenated. Aesthetically, soy wax is not pleasing to look at, and soy candles often develop bumps and lesions while burning. Many soy candles contain additives and hardeners, and they also have toxic pesticides that are used in the soy crops. Paraffin, again, it's a toxic petrol soot. It's the byproduct from the oil industry. It's just gross. They produce a disorganized light spectrum very similar to old-fashioned incandescent light bulbs. It's relatively short burning time, and it really drips a lot. There's a lot of dripping waste. When burned, it releases the same toxic chemicals as oil and gasoline. Typically contains artificial fragrances and colors, which also produce toxins, and they stain when they're burned. So the benefits of burning beeswax candles. So number one, lower toxicity. Because beeswax candles are all natural, they do not produce toxic byproducts and heavy soot when burned. Some types of candles produce minute traces of chemicals known to be carcinogenic, like the paraffin candles and the soy candles, but this is not a problem with the beeswax candles. They neutralize pollutants. So beeswax candles can actually produce negative ions, which when burned, these ions help neutralize the pollutants in the air. This helps eliminate dust, odors, and mold in the atmosphere, easing allergy and asthma symptoms and improving breathing for anyone nearby. The simple act of burning a beeswax candle has relaxing properties and can aid in stress relief and meditation. The mildly sweet natural honey scent of beeswax can aid that relaxation without being overwhelming as artificially scented candles can become. Also, because beeswax candles are all natural and produce no byproducts, they are naturally dripless when used properly and thus are safer to burn. This avoids the risk of burns and other injuries that can result from burning other types of candles improperly. Also, the beeswax candle have the brightest, purest light of any candles and are the closest to natural sunlight. If the candles are to be used as a light source, it can help minimize eye strain and reduce headaches. Sorry, one second. Sorry, we just went through that. So using beeswax candles, there are many ways to burn beeswax candles to take advantage of their natural health benefits. Individuals who suffer from breathing difficulties such as asthma or allergies should consider burning only pure beeswax candles and burning the candles for 30 to 60 minutes in the bedroom before sleeping, which can help clear the air for a more restful sleep. Beeswax candles are also best to be used in the kitchen where they help neutralize odors without tainting the food with artificial aromas. They can also be used in a home office or any other area where there may be a large area concentration of lingering odors. Teenagers' bedroom, your husband's shoes. I always tell a story that we have the dog that you heard barking. She's a Newfie Husky, and she loves to be outside, especially if it's like wet and cold. And she comes in and you get that wet dog smell. But I light my beeswax candles, and it really does help eliminate that odor. Like within a half an hour, it's so nice. It's very cleansing. But remember, beeswax candles can even be used in a nursery to clear the air for young and delicate lungs. But remember, burning beeswax candles should never be left burning unattended children. Obviously, we have to be careful. The cost of beeswax candles vary depending on the size of the candle, its purity, and the candle design. But interested shoppers should be aware that beeswax candles are frequently more expensive than other types of candles. Well, we're all beekeepers, so we know. We were just seeing how much work goes into rendering and how little wax comes out of the rendering of the actual rendering. So that's part of the cost as well. It takes a lot of bees and beekeeper work to make one of those, to make some wax. The price difference is offset, however, by the candle's health benefits and the fact that they have a significantly longer burn time than paraffin and other inexpensive candles. Buying in bulk may also help you save money on beeswax candles, and many retailers offer periodic sales with savings. When shopping for beeswax candles, it's important to buy high quality candles to take the maximum advantage of their health benefits. The candle should be 100% beeswax without added colors or chemicals that can taint the beeswax and negate its natural benefits. If essential oils are used to give the candle an alternative scent, the oils should themselves be 100% pure. Cotton wicks are the best in beeswax candles as they have the fewest toxins and are the most beneficial. Also, if you use organic cotton wicks, those are even better. So you know that there's that none of the pesticides and herbicides that can be in some cotton. So of course we have to go over some candle burning safety. Beeswax has a melting point of 143 degrees Fahrenheit to 149 degrees Fahrenheit and a flash point of 400 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, it takes a considerable amount of time to heat beeswax in a double boiler. If you choose to use direct heat, set the temperature to low and do not walk away. Overheating beeswax can destroy some of the natural qualities and leave it a dark, dirty brown color. Never burn a candle that's not within sight. Keep burning candles away from drafts, vents, ceiling fans, and other air currents. Never touch or move a candle when the wax is liquid. Never burn a candle directly near or on anything flammable. Always use a candle holder specifically designed for candle use. Be sure the candle holder is placed on a stable, heat-resistant surface. Keep candles out of reach of children and pets. My cats are terrible. I had a vision just recently. My cat was walking and her tail went into the votive holder and caught on fire. So that's, oh my God. We put it out. She's fine, but yeah, cats are terrible. Keep the wax pool free of wick trimmings, matches, and debris at all times. Trim candle wicks to 1/4 inch each time before burning. Make sure that all the candles are completely out before you leave the room. Also, straighten the wick after it has been extinguished. So I will go over it again, but the best way to put out a beeswax candle is to actually dip your wick in, like the flame, into your wax pool. This will actually reduce the amount of like smoke. And when you blow it out, you have all the smoke. That'll actually almost eliminate that. Plus it then coats your wick in the wax, so it makes it easier to light and burn the next time. So it's actually really cool. I started doing that and it works really nicely. Please remember that beeswax candles can burn differently than all other wax candles. Beeswax has a different composition depending on the flowers the bees have pollinated. This means every candle will burn differently and will have different quirks and imperfections. The wax may crack in between burns and it may burn unevenly. Beeswax will not melt like soy or paraffin wax candles, and it will have its own way of burning. This is part of the charm of beeswax candles, and we love its imperfections. If you want a candle to behave in a uniform and perfect way, beeswax candles may not be for you. The 100%, so then I'm going to go over a little bit about how candles will burn and which ones, what the traits are for them. So 100% beeswax jars, which we always like making jarred candles. I'm going to go over some specific methods of making our candles in a bit. They burn powerfully for the first few minutes as the wax powers through the wick. Then when we use it for the first time and each time after that, we recommend that you burn. Now here it says 4 hours, but again, it depends on the size of your candle. What we want you to do is burn so that the wax almost reaches, the wax pool almost reaches the edge of the jar, or it does. So you want to melt all of the wax right out to the edge of the candle. This actually it's not just for jars that we're doing this. This is for any of your beeswax candles. This help prevent pooling, or excuse me, tunneling and things like that. So for these jars, because we're assuming they're basically mason, you know, on average, the mason sized jars, never burn the candles for short periods of time. Again, it's stating 2 hours or less, but it depends on the size of your jar. This can cause tunneling, as there's not enough time for the wax pool to melt to the edge of the jar. As the beeswax is a hard wax, it may take 2, 3, or even 4 hours or more to burn the wax right to the edges of the jar. This is because beeswax is hard wax and it burns slowly and also longer than other candle waxes. Always trim the wick to 5 millimeters before lighting the candle. This removes the carbon from the end of the wick and means the flame will be larger. This in turn helps the flame burn bigger and brighter and help the wax burn all the way to the edge of the jar, which prevents tunneling. Always ensure your wick is upright. If it leans to one side, the melt pool will be uneven. We recommend extinguishing the candle by dipping the flame in the wax melt pool. This extinguishes the flame without causing any smoke, and it also coats the wick in melted beeswax, which helps secure the powerful flame next time you light the candle. So burning tips, there's certain tips for different types of candles. So 1 wick pillar candles, keep the wicks trimmed to 1/4 inch or less to prevent soot. Ensure the candle is kept clean and doesn't gather dirt or excess dust. If dirty or dusty, carefully clean the top of your candle with paper towel or lint-free cloth. To ensure your candle burns cleanly across the top, burn it for 1 hour for each inch in diameter, or until the wax pool extends from edge to edge. So this is great for, you know, pretty standard shaped candles. Sometimes if your candle's, you know, one of the novelty candles, it will be slightly different, but just because the shape is irregular. So, but generally speaking, for pillar candles or tapers are 1 inch, 1 hour per inch in length is how long they will burn for. And the pillars, you want to burn them for 1 hour per inch in diameter to get your, and that's how we're going to test the wick size as well, which I'll go over. So for example, burn a 2.5 inch pillar at least 2.5 hours, burn a 4 inch pillar at least 4 hours. Use a metal tool to straighten up a curled or tilted wick to the opposite direction to correct uneven burning, and extinguish a candle by pushing, again, the wick into the melted wax pool to prevent afterglow and smoke. So the best choosing a wick, the trickiest part of making beeswax candles is choosing the wicking. The best wick to use is a cotton braid. Some are flat or some are square, depending on the side. There are many sizes of cotton wick braiding. 2 beeswax candles identical in diameter and wicked the same may burn differently depending on the crop of beeswax and how well it is cleaned. Most candle makers agree that square cotton braided wicks are the best to use with beeswax candles. It's important to test when making your candles, especially if you're going making candles in a jar or something similar. You want to avoid tunneling or pooling. Tunneling, which is when it just melts in the center and goes right down, or pooling, which is when it's too much wax melted and your wick will drown. So that if it's pooling, your wick is too small, you need to go up a size. If it's tunneling, your wick is too big. Excuse me. If it's pooling, let me read what I'm doing. I get myself all confused. If your candle is tunneling, you need to go to a bigger wick. And if it's pooling, you will need to go to a smaller wick, because that way you slow the burning down. And then if it's tunneling, you need to go up so that it melts more out. Sorry about that. Depending on your candle size, you will need to burn for at least an hour or 2 to determine the correct wicking size. Why are candles braided? Most high quality wicks are made from braided, plaited, or knitted fibers to encourage a slow and consistent burn. They will burn much faster because their loose construction allows more fuel to quickly reach the flame. However, twisted wicks are useful for certain applications such as birthday candles. So there are a few other types of wicks I've experimented with as well. So there's wooden wicks. These are unique and nice, burn nicely for your beeswax candles. They stand up straight in clips, and there are some that crackle and others that don't. There are also some you can see in the center picture that are sort of round. That will actually change the shape of your flame a little bit as well. So it's kind of cool. I've used wooden wicks a few times. You really do have to test the wick and the candle sizes to make sure that they're going to burn properly. Sometimes it's trickier to get them to burn with the beeswax candles. I think there are some that are said that they're specifically designed for beeswax, where others are specifically designed for paraffin and soy. So I think it just depends on how the candles burn. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind. There are also hemp wicks. So hemp is sort of similar to cotton. They actually make good wicks as well. They often are coated in an even layer of natural beeswax, or you can coat them yourselves and can be used immediately as your candle wick. There are no flare-ups, and the even layer of beeswax ensures that the flame will burn uniformly and melt your candle wax into smooth, even layers. So hemp is sustainable, natural. Often it can be grown more environmentally friendly ways than cotton can be. So it just depends. Hemp is becoming a widely used fiber. These braided wicks are made with natural fibers of hemp instead of cotton. Hemp wicks provide for a hotter burning wick and increased rigidity. These wicks do not require any type of trimming, and they produce no mushrooms and allow for a fast melt pool. Hemp is an extremely sustainable product, being able to produce 4 times the amount of paper goods as wood pulp within the same space. So people feel that hemp can be a little bit more environmentally friendly. So this is just a wick sizing chart from one of our candle mold suppliers, but online. So these are not all of the wick sizes that we have that are out there, but these are some of the most common ones. When you start at the top for a 5/0, that's the smallest wick, and you can see that they're good for tea lights. And then you go down and it changes to number 1, number 2, all the way up to number 7. And those are the larger ones. Often we get people who come in the store and they feel like 5/0 is the same as a number 5, but they are not. You can see that the 5/0 is a lot smaller than the number 5. And then we also carry something called a 60 ply, which is again a different braiding, and I think it's a little bit flatter. Some are square, but anyway, it's just often the molds will come with recommendations for the wick size, and that's kind of where you need to experiment. And depending on your source for the wicks as well, each wick could burn differently depending on the manufacturer and where it comes from. So there are some, just quickly before I go through frequently asked questions. So I went over a little bit about the single wick pillars. If you have multi-wick pillars, always burn all of the wicks at the same time. Everything you want to still trim it to 1/4 of an inch, but you never want to burn one wick at a time, because that's going to create an uneven burn, and you will get tunneling if you only do one at a time. So you always want to do all, like for example, if there are 3 wicks, all 3 wicks at the same time, and you're still going to melt or burn it until the wax pool goes out to the edge of your candle to get a nice even melt. Okay. So with votives, you always want to burn your votive in a proper container, because it could melt. I mean, it'll melt quite quickly. So you want to have something that's going to contain that, just to help your votive last longer. There is a suggestion: if you add a little bit of water to the bottom of your votive container, once your candle gets right down, because you won't get that last bit of wax, but it'll be a lot easier to remove that last bit of wax. Tea lights, always burn tea lights in containers, aluminum or plastic that is designed to burn. But also always burn your tea lights all the way down. Tea lights aren't the type of candle that really do well for short periods of burn. So the tea light will burn between 3 and 5 hours or so, depending on the size of the tea light and the candle. But you want to use that and burn it all the way down. It's sort of a one-use candle. Tapers and candlesticks, they will burn again. You want them in a container, and generally the length of time that they will burn is 1 hour per inch in length. So if it's an 8-inch candle, it should burn for about 8 hours. If it's 10-inch candle, it should burn for about 10 hours. Again, you can put it out with a candle snuffer because you're not going to really have a melt pool with that. So some frequently asked questions. What is that white dust film on my beeswax candles? So if you have that white dust on your beeswax candles, it looks like a film. We call it bloom, and it actually is a good indicator that you have good pure beeswax. As natural oils present in the beeswax comes to the surface, it turns them white, puts that film, and it's called bloom. Bloom can be removed by wiping the surface with a clean, lint-free cloth right off. As burning tip, it's always a good idea to gently wipe the top of your candle, being careful not to break the wick before burning. So the bloom can be wiped off. If you feel that your candle doesn't look good or the bloom's not wiping off, you can also use a hairdryer just to heat it up slightly and then wipe it off, and actually gives your candles a really nice fresh shine. If it's like if you think you just beyond anything, always melt it down and make a new candle out of it. It's kind of cool. So what can I do with my leftover wax and drippings? You can make many different goods, from lotions to lip balms, or even add it to soaps, beeswax wraps. What I do, actually, I was just thinking, when I do filter my beeswax through the cheesecloth, I will put that in after I've lit my smoker, and then I put it in with my hay or straw or whatever I use as fuel, and I add my filtered cheesecloth with the wax on it, and it helps my smokers actually stay lit. And it's kind of like a fire starter. So it does make your smoker a little bit sticky, because it doesn't burn as quickly as everything else, but then you can keep reusing it. But just keep in mind, it kind of melts in your smoker, but I use it. How long does beeswax stay good for? Beeswax will last forever. It's much like the honey. Wicks may need to be recoated in wax if it's dried out in order to help it to start a good burn. One question that we're often asked is why wax is so many different colors. As I mentioned earlier, although fresh beeswax is white, by the time humans get to it, it can vary from golden yellow to dark amber. The beeswax varies due to the age of the cappings, also what pollen and honey that they had. In order to bring it back to white, it needs to be filtered with a natural filtration system such as charcoal, or chemically treated, which is bleached. So a lot of times you need to be careful that if you buy white beeswax, pure white, they may say that it's cappings or the brand new comb, but we all know how long it takes. So that'd be really expensive. More often than not, and now with a lot of good candle making companies, they will use a charcoal filtration system, and they'll keep filtering it. The more you filter the wax, the lighter it will get. Also keep in mind though, when you keep filtering the wax, you're taking out all of the benefits, all of the products that give it those natural benefits. So you're not making it bad for you, but you're taking out some of those good qualities when you keep filtering the pollen and the stuff out, the stuff that gives it its color. But you want to make sure that it's not bleached. Bleaches will totally negate everything. Plus you're going to have those products from the bleaching process. Can I burn my beeswax candles right away? Of course you can, but it is always suggested that you wait at least 24 hours, but the best suggestion is to wait 7 to 10 days for your candle to fully cure. That'll just give it the best burning time. Your candle will be cured. I very rarely wait. Sometimes if I make some really nice candles, I'll light them. It's not the greatest, but it works. It's all good. Why did my candle crack, my beeswax candle crack? As a beeswax cools, it shrinks. And if it cools too quickly, cracks can form as the wax hardens. It's not a flaw, but a character trait of beeswax. If you want to smooth out the top, you can gently heat it with a blow dryer or a heat gun. Also, when making jars, and we're gonna go over a little bit of how do we do certain candles. If in the winter your jars are going to be a little cooler temperature because your room, the ambient temperature is cooler, and then you pour your hot wax in it, it'll help cool the outside of your wax quicker and then the inside, and that can also create cracks and air bubbles as well. So in order to help with that, you can warm up your jars a little bit by putting them in a warm water bath, just to help warm up the jars. And you can also pour your wax at a cooler temperature, which will help with that, slowing down the, or heat up the room as well. How long will my beeswax candles burn for? Provided that they are made with 100% beeswax, each tea light will burn, this says 8 to 9, but I always like to say, depending on the size of the candles, between 4 and 9 hours if it's a good size tea light. Votives are typically 2 inches in diameter and 3 inches tall, so pure beeswax votives can have an average burn time of 16 hours. A pillar weighing about 1 pound, approximately 3 inches by 5 inches, can burn for about 100 hours. This is for solid candles. Dipped or rolled candles will have a shorter burn time as they're not obviously as compact. Solid beeswax tapers will burn approximately 1 hour per inch in height. This can vary somewhat by width as well, though. What do you use to melt your beeswax if you don't have a wax melter? We have fabulous wax melters at Dancing Bee, by the way, but I mean, we all don't have all the money. I don't own one, but I like using them at Dancing Bee. But again, so it was great to see how the different methods of melting the beeswax at the beginning with the Sous-Vide and the slow cooker. And you also can use the solar melters. There's all kinds of stuff online that shows different ways to filter and melt your wax. So it's pretty cool. How do you filter cappings and raw beeswax? So again, we had a little bit of that demonstration. Sometimes I'll soak my cappings in alcohol and then strain that into a jar so I have honey flavored cappings. I don't think I've used those cappings. Because I wasn't sure if I could make that into a candle, but also again, you filter it with the cheesecloth and stuff as well. I think that's just about it for that one. So these are just some luminaries that we had made at Dancing Bee, and we're gonna just briefly, I wonder if I should pause right now. I'm going to see if anybody had any questions really quickly before I continue. Just switching back over to my Zoom to see if there's any questions. Let me see, there we are. So I don't know, I'm just gonna see if there's any questions.
Can you please go back with your presentation to the slide right after the waxes that were not beeswax? Like the first beeswax slide?
The first beeswax after we were talking about soy?
Yeah.
Let me just, all right.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this it here? This one here?
Or was it the next one?
The health benefits?
Yeah, I guess it was this one. Yeah.
Okay, so here we'll start. So here was the beeswax chemistry, and
Yeah.
then that one, and then this one. One more.
Yeah, the next after this guy.
There we go. The health benefits.
Yeah.
Here, I can make this a little bit bigger so we can see.
Mhm.
There we go. So when you,
So,
yep.
Here where it says relaxation, right?
Yep.
So this is about like the sand.
Yes, it's the scent just of the natural beeswax and also the anti-ions and just the properties of what is in the beeswax can actually aid relaxation. I think also burning a candle itself can be relaxing as well, but rather so it's not emitting the toxins, and it's not creating, if it has artificial fragrances and stuff, it can also create headaches and things like that. So I know that there are many people who can't burn anything but beeswax because it does create headaches, but it can also, those chemicals could also create anxiety and stuff. So it can heighten different things, where with the beeswax, none of that is occurring. You're just, it's the scent can be relaxing. People feel sort of like a connection with nature because they're very natural, and there's nothing else added to it.
And in terms of like the last bullet, light, right? Is there like a specific recommendation for the diameter of the candles used for light?
Oh yeah. So I don't, yeah, I do know what you mean. So I don't know specifically like the measurement, but I have burned candles in a jar. And to be honest, when you get them, when it goes down inside your jar, it's kind of the same effect. You sort of put a flashlight, you know, in a, like against a jug of water. I don't know if you've ever done that when camping, but I feel
is
like,
it like is it like, does it stable, like it makes it more stable?
yeah, the wind isn't blowing it around.
Yeah. Okay. And does it amplify?
I feel like it does. So I
Okay.
feel like that it has made it better. You're going to need a couple candles, like, but if your candle's right there and you're just sort of reading or whatever, and it's not the blue light as well. So it's not going to, you know, it doesn't give you the same effect as the blue light. But if you had a couple candles, you know, just in like a cozy nook and you're burning a few candles around, that light, as long as it's not terribly dark, but those lights are going to actually help ease the eye strain and allow you to be able to read, or even just, you know, do your whatever you need to do just with that low light without having the artificial blue light stuff. But I feel like in the jars, it does amplify it somewhat, and then it will keep your flame steady, so you're not the flickering.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any specific glass for those jars, or is it like N? I guess it has to be more consistent, right? Like
yeah, like if you for the light, I feel I've burned the ones that are like just pure, like flat. You don't want texture in it, but also just always test to make sure that it can take the flame, because I've tested a few that crack because it gets too hot. So at Wicking Bee, I've experimented with some of our hexagon, not the it's weird, the round hexagon, but the unique shape, where it's like I don't have a sample. Wait, I do. Hold on one second. I'm gonna take it off screen sharing for a second, because hold on one second. Sorry, one moment, because I want to show you Zoom, but you can't see me, so I have to take it off share for a second, right? Oh, stop share. Okay, let me stop the share. Okay, so this is one of my the jar. So I've got my wick in there.
Yeah.
So this one, this is our 500 mil, so it's quite large. I don't know if you. So this is the hexagon shape, and I tested it because I wanted to make sure that the oxygen could get down there as well. So that's also important, and it did seem to work quite nicely. And I had the flame come down to the center, and it really burned really nice. The only disadvantage with this one is because, especially with the lid, you know, it's a little bit narrow. There is a little bit of burning black. You end up with some black from the flame on the glass. And it's an odd shape. So it you know, for testing, you know, that it looks really cool. And the wax, if you get the right size. So this one is, I believe, a number 4. I have put in this one, and it will melt most of the wax off the edges. A little bit dirty, but then if you like a little bit left over, but if you put it in warm water, it'll melt the rest down, and the soot you can wash off. Now I burned it all the way down to the bottom, and this didn't crack. So people are actually
Right.
quite surprised that these didn't crack. And we have a smaller one, the 250 mil. I think I have it here. Oh, maybe I didn't have that one. So anyway, the half size one, I like it. It's a little bit different. I don't know if we would sell it, just simply because when you burn it, but if you make it for personal use, it's not too bad, right? Like I said, I get a little bit of black around the top, especially, and you'll need like a barbecue lighter that bends to be able to
go inside, right?
So but you can, like, that's the joy with beeswax. You can experiment and see it, but always, like, this kind of thing, especially if you're going to have it in your jar, you want to make sure that it's not going to crack the heat, especially that's not going to crack your jar. And this one was fine. So we were all actually a little bit surprised that it didn't, but it did. It lit the room right up. It was quite nice. So it looked really cool. Oops. So I like those, but again, just because it doesn't burn quite as cleanly as, you know, a pillar or some other jars, but even mason jars are good because you know that they can take a lot of heat because you make jam and stuff, so they have to boil them. So you tend to know that you can do a lot of heat in those, and they have the wider mouth, so that you shouldn't get the soot and stuff. So okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm just going to see.
These are the jars that I got from Dancing Bee to do my honey, and then people are asking me what to do with them after. So now that you've just said that, I think that would actually be a good shape.
Absolutely, because we can't reuse them for honey, right? So
poke gummy bottles in there right now.
oh. That's all right. That's a good one too.
No, but I think that would actually, now that you just said that, I think that would be a great size for a candle in there.
It would be, and it would burn forever. And like I said, it kind of protects the flame. I'm pointing at your screen like you can see me. It's it would I don't know, I love jars. Some people don't like the jars, but I do. I like all kinds of candles, but the jars are really nice because it's already contained in its container. You can sort of light it, and as long as it's in a fairly safe spot, you know, your cat shouldn't stick their tail in it and burn the house down. So, you know. All right. I can continue. Oh, what size jar would you, wick would you use for a jam jar? So again, I would sort of start with assuming it's kind of like a pillar. So on the chart, I usually start with like a number 3 or a number 4. So however many inches in diameter a pillar would be, if that's similar to what your jar would be, I would start there and then always test it just to make sure that it'll be okay. If it burns too quickly, melt it down, pour it out, and then restart with a different size wick. But I generally start with like a 3 or 4 for the average size jam jars. So like this one is a number 4, but it's because of the weird shape, right? So it's not a very big diameter here, but I wanted to try and get it to melt as much as this down as I could so that it would keep going down. And the 4 seemed to work for this one. For the 250 mil of these ones, I use a number 3. And it was good too. And it actually, the smaller one in my mind burned a little bit better than the larger one. It burned cleaner, but I don't know. I think they're kind of cool. So. All right. So we'll go back to screen sharing and we'll just do a little bit of, so now in my workshop would be the actual hands-on kind of stuff. Actually, we usually make the candles beforehand, and then I do my spiel, and then we do some stuff after because we want the candles, we do molds and stuff. So we always want them to be able to solidify beforehand. So we show them how to do it, and then we tell them why they did it, and then we add surprise at the end. So we'll do this. All right. We're gonna go back up. Oh, and we'll just go through this really quick. All right. Okay, so yeah, here we'll just go, if I can go back arrow. There we go. So here the wicking chart for the jam jar. So this tells you the candle diameter. So instead of using the candle, just the jar diameter. So, you know, if the jar is between 2 and 3 inches, you could start with a number 4.
I don't see the chart.
Is anybody seeing it?
Okay, now it's on. Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is just kind of a guideline. So you always want to test it, but this is sort of a good guideline of where to start for your candles. Okay. All right. So this is our lovely Mary, and she's showing how to do the hand dipped candles. This is our large, I think the 55-gallon drum wax melter. So on this wax melter, you can see we have a cozy, a bee dry cozy on the top of it, or foil. It looks like a bee cozy, but also there's 2 drum heaters. So we have a drum heater on the bottom and a drum heater sort of on the top. And this one, the water is on the bottom below we have a pour spout in the side of it. So we put water in it, and then we put our wax in it. So the water heats up, and then the wax heats up the wax heats up, and it floats to the top. The water stays down to the bottom, and it's a great way. It just melts. So there's probably 300-400 pounds at least of wax in there right now. So it's a great way for us to melt a large amount of wax to make large amount of candles. And it's really nice to be able to you can make really long hand dipped candles. So first, what you want to do is you want to string the wick around your dipping apparatus. This Mary's holding actually it's a side for a beeswax frame, a right cell brood frame. And so that's just one of the sides for the wooden frames. And we cut the wick, and it's just sort of one solid wick that goes around. And then on the bottom of it, we put little weights to help keep your wick taut. So you want to make sure your wick is straight and tight. Perfectly vertical wick is helpful but not necessary. So you want to prime your wick by dipping the apparatus 1 to 1 inch below the top bar and hold on until all air bubbles rise from the wicks. So what this means is you're going to dip it in the wax and then just hold it in there until all the air bubbles come off. And this helps prevent pockets, air bubbles, and helps the wax build up on your wick. So then you want to dip your candle apparatus into the wax, lowering slowly for 2 seconds and then slowly raising for 2 seconds. If you dip too slowly, the bottom of the candle may remain hotter and create an inverse taper at the bottom of the candle. If that happens, you just simply make that, the bottom and the other one the top, or you reverse it. You say, oh, I did it on purpose. You can always cut it to make it. It takes actually a long time to get the knack of doing this. If you remove the candle too quickly from the wax, hot wax will dip down the candle, cooling in a wavy look. So and it also will take a lot longer for it to build up. So then step 4, let the candle cool for several seconds, and then repeat steps 3 and 4 until the desired thickness is achieved. Use a sharp knife and scissors to cut the bottom of the candles, and then you complete a couple more dips to finish the candle. Leaving the candle in the wax can help produce a smoother and shinier candle. So this is optional. So you just leave it in there, let it coat it all once you give a smooth finish. Tips. You want to save all the trimmings. Wax can be melted off equipment and reused. So like when you cut the bottom off, save it, you can reuse it. If a candle doesn't turn out, put it back in the dipping vat. And then once the wax is melted off all the wicking, retrieve the wick and start over. Wax contracts slightly when it cools, so your finished candle will be slightly thinner than when it is completely cooled. So molded candles, these are becoming very popular. They're a great way to make some really unique and fun candles, a fairly easy way to make some pillars as well. So first you want to melt your wax in your double boiler, whatever your wax melter is. Unfiltered debris often sinks to the bottom of the melting pot. Make sure the melting pot is not getting too low to avoid getting debris in your candles. Once you get down to the bottom, it's a good idea to clean your melting pot as well, because you will have a lot of that gunk. While waiting for wax to melt, prepare your molds. So this is where I said that before I go through my spiel, I show everybody how to prepare. We do the molds and then we pour the wax.
Dana?
Yeah.
Dana, should what we be seeing, there we are. Got it. That's it.
Oh, I wonder if I have to move my mouse every so often to get it back on there. Okay, so you guys can see it now?
Yep, we got it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I can't see you guys when I have the full screen on, so that's great that you let me know. So in this picture, you can see various types of how we hold the wicking. So first, what you're going to do while you're waiting for your wax to melt, you're going to prepare your molds. You pull the wick through the hole at the bottom of the mold. Now these types of molds themselves, these are from a local supplier called Busy Bee, and they come often with metal or wooden skewers that will sit in the center. I don't like using those. What it is, it's a placeholder for your wick. So then you pour it, it solidifies part way, and you want to make sure that the center is solid. And then you pull out the skewer in the candle if you want, but mostly if it's weird shaped, you'd leave it in there. But then you're going to get a wicking needle, which is a very long, it's just like a sewing needle, but really long and a little bit thicker. You're going to thread your wick into it and then pull it through your candle. The thing is, you have to really time it right, because if your candle isn't solid enough in the center, you're obviously, once you pull that skewer out, you're going to pour the wax out if it's not melted. So I like just to wick my candles first, and this solves that problem, and then I can leave it in there to solidify all the way. If you don't, so because with the skewer, if you leave the skewer in for like 24 hours, or if you let the candle cure all the way, it will become very, very difficult to very difficult to take that skewer out, and I've had to melt it down before. So just one moment. I'm gonna go let my dog out. Just 1 second. Okay. Can you put her out, please? Yes. Okay, so what we're doing is pull it. So you're going to pull the wick through, and keep in mind the top that you're seeing here is actually the bottom of your mold. So a lot of people get, it's a little bit counterintuitive because they think that this is the top of their mold. So that's the bottom. So it doesn't have to be necessarily perfect, but you can see a couple different methods. I have some metal bars across. They have little notches. They're wick holders. The thing is with those, they kind of go down to the bottom, so they'll leave a little indentation on the wax once it cools. You can use wire. So there's really cool, just a little wire. This is just wire that goes through. This is actually a wax foundation wire that we put through the wax foundation. And then you can arch it and tie your wick to it so it makes it taut, but then it leaves the bottom nice and clean. You can use skewers, just tie a knot around a skewer. You can use clothespins, just, you know, put the clothespin. There's all kinds of stuff. It just depends on what you want to do. So you want to extend the wick about 1 inch above the candle mold. Use a wooden dowel, skewer, popsicle stick, or bobby pin. Actually, bobby pins are really good as well to hold the wick in place and to keep it centered. Wrap the wicking around the dowel to make sure it's tight but not stretching the wick. So also, some of the molds you can see have rubber bands around them. Depending on the shape, if they're different kinds of molds, like a weird shape, you will need to split the mold in order to get it out. And I'm going to show you. I have a sample. I'm going to not share my screen for a minute so that I'm going to show you a sample that I have. All right, can you see me? Okay, so this is one that I have here at home. So this is a really cool, it's like a twisted candle. But this, to take out of the mold, was really tough because it's such a different shape. So we split the mold down the side. and then you spread it open so that you can take your candle out. So that makes it easier. There are many people, we have had actually a lot of new people making candles and stuff, and then they got molds for Christmas, and I received a lot of emails. My mold has a slice down it, I want a refund. Which is fine, but unfortunately it's like, no, they come that way to make it easier to remove your candle. So there's if they're different shapes, the slice is okay because you need it to remove your candle. What you do is you just put a rubber band around it, and it will help be able to remove the mold. So all right, I'm going to go back to sharing. Perfect. All right, and if it doesn't show up, just let me know again. All right. There we go. I think that should work, right? All right. So once you get it all wicked and the wick is centered right, you want to check on the wax. The target temperature should be 165 Fahrenheit to 170 Fahrenheit. Pour the wax into the mold. So again, you don't want it too hot because it'll cool too quickly, and that'll create more cracking and air bubbles. The wax will contract as it cools, so it may create some small cavities as it cools. You can fill the cavities with additional wax as needed, especially in the center of it. Wait until the candles cool completely before removing the mold. The exterior of the candle may be cool, but the interior of the candle may still be liquid. I have found this out often firsthand. I'm way too impatient. And it's like, oh man, so then you have to start again. Trim the wick on top to 1/2 inch. I like to leave a little bit more, but before I burn it, I will make sure that it's not too long to burn. But yeah, you can trim the wick to 1/2 inch and then trim on the bottom of the candle. Some people, this is optional, will dip the wick on the top of the candle in hot wax just to give it that coating, which will help it light, especially the first time. Or you can use wick that you've already pre-dipped in the wax, and then you can use that. So it's already pre-dipped, coated in wax. That's fine as well. The bottom of the candle may be bumpy or uneven, and you can use a dedicated electric skillet or pan, or I use a griddle. Or if you want to use one that's not just dedicated to beeswax, you can put foil on it and then just put it on top of the foil. So then the foil removes and you can still use that pan to cook. And then that'll work to flatten the bottoms. Tip, wait at least 1 day for the wax to fully cure before lighting your candles. All right. So the next one we do is candles in a jar. Okay, so these, you can see, these are the hexagon jars that I made. I used, for jars especially, I like to wax my wicks because it helps them stand up a little straighter, and it makes it a little easier to stand at, to reach the bottom and to center it. So again, you want to melt your beeswax in a double boiler. In all beeswax candles, selecting the proper wick is extremely important in making candles that will burn properly. And this is especially true of making candles in containers. Select a wick that is large enough for the selected jar. Pre-wax the wick by soaking it in the melted beeswax, and when the bubbles stop rising from the wick, all of the air is out of it. Carefully remove the wick to let cool to a temperature in which it can be handled. You straighten out the wick and then allow it to fully cool. So you straighten it. I just set it on a table and I straighten it so that it becomes stiff and straight. Stick the wick to the bottom of the jar using a dab of beeswax, hot glue, or a candle tab. So some people I like using the candle tabs. I feel like it helps the wick stand up, especially when the wax gets sort of towards the bottom and then it's all sort of melted wax at the bottom. And to me, it feels easier to stick it to the bottom. Some people don't. They just use the wick and just stick it to the bottom and center it. It's personal choice. Then you pour the hot wax into the jar. Tip, container candles may sometimes crack while cooling. Using liquid wax that is cooler, closer to 160, can help prevent cracking. Or like I said, you can warm up your candles in a water bath, the outside of it, the jars in a water bath, and that will help as well. Allowing candle to cool slowly in a room with a warmer ambient temperature can also help reduce cracking. Okay. So the roll candles. So these are all beeswax foundation cut comb. Craft stores. I remember Michael's, maybe I'm dating myself, and White Rose. I used to work at White Rose a long time ago. They used to sell all these sheets. You know, you could get stacks and stacks. Now it's hard to say if they were actually 100% beeswax, because often they will to make these beeswax sheets. They could be mixed with other things depending if you know where you're getting them from. But they're actually a really cool way to get kids and to make different fun shaped candles and stuff as well. So what you want to do, if you have these sheets, you want to warm your sheets of wax foundation, obviously with no wire. There are deep and mediums, there's different sizes. And you can cut it to different shapes if you want as well. If you want to taper, you cut it at an angle. Thicker, you just add more. So there's all kinds of stuff that you could do with this as well. You're going to select the appropriate size wick and dip it. It's easier to roll a dipped wick, so you then you place it in the center of your, or on the edge, but you know, so that there's wick sticking out of both ends. And then you're going to roll the wick. So you lay the dipped wick at one end of the sheet, pinch around the wick and roll tightly to the desired diameter. Add more sheets for various diameters of candle if required. Then you cut and trim the wick to the proper burn height, and then you can even out the bottom again by placing it on the griddle, and it'll flatten it out so then it won't unroll. You can also use a heat gun, or you can use a hair dryer, and then you can melt the seam slightly just to make sure it doesn't unroll. And then finally, this is always a lot of fun. These are Beeswax Luminaries. We did this a lot in the fall and Christmas. And this is, you can see that's one of our little 14-liter beeswax melters, or the wax melters. This actually will also heat a 5-gallon pail of honey. So a 5-gallon pail will fit right in our wax melter. The water goes in that spout in the front, so it's a double walled, so the water never touches the wax. But if you need to reliquefy any crystallized honey, it's actually perfect for our 5-gallon pails. So we call it a wax melter / pail heater as well. It's a lot of fun. It's really great. I wish I could afford it maybe someday, but it's kind of a neat thing. I really enjoy using it. So you can see that we use water balloons for this. It's a lot of fun. The kids love doing this, and for me it takes a lot less time than hand dipping candles, the tapers. So I like to do this because I don't have a lot of patience. So you're going to fill your balloon with warm water, fill them to the size that you want your luminary to be. They should be full enough that they are plump and taut. Heat your beeswax to about 160 to 170. You can use a cooking pot on low heat, a double boiler, or whatever you have available. Your crock pot works really nicely for this as well. Be prepared to donate the wax pot to a Forever More wax, because it's a headache to clean out. So again, it's just letting you know it's a dedicated pot to wax. So you melt the wax on high, then turn it down to low before you set to work. No thermometer, no worries. Here are some common issues to relate to temperature. So if the wax is sticking smoothly to your balloon, the temperature is just right. If the wax is lumpy, then your temperature is too cool. If the wax is melting the previous layer off when you redip, then it's too hot. Dip your balloon repeatedly, making sure not to dip beyond the water air line every 6 dips or so, gently placing the balloon on a piece of parchment paper to flatten the bottom. Actually, I've also dipped I usually dip my balloon between 25 and 30 times. And then I just put it on the table of parchment paper right at the end to flatten the bottom. What this does is just gives you a little bit of a base, and it'll sit there while it cools. You can see after it cools, I'm popping the balloon. You don't actually have to pop the balloon. It's a lot of fun. The kids love that part. But if you want to do the very same, like the luminaries is the same shape and size exactly, you can peel the balloon off from the sides and you turn it upside down, and obviously the balloon has changed shape because the water moves out of it, and you can just pull that balloon out. It works quite well. I've done it a few times. So you can either pop it or you can peel the balloon out. So then once the balloon is removed from the luminary, you put a little bit of liquid wax in the bottom just to give the bottom a little bit more solid instability, just to make it a little thicker. So then it's a little bit more weight on the bottom. Once that solidifies, you can see in the bottom picture that we're just flattening a little bit more to give the luminary a little bit more base. Make sure it's even on the bottom. Lift it straight up. It'll drip a little bit, wait for it to dry. And then I turn it over and I even out the top as well, because you may have a few little thin layers. So you just turn it over and melt it down to whatever size shape that you want. Make sure that it's good. Again, you let that cool. And then you're going to add sand to the bottom. In a little bit of sand, just to, again, a little bit of insulation for your tea light. So you can either use a real tea light, a beeswax tea light in a proper burning. Always make sure it's in a container to contain the wax, or you can use a battery powered tea light as well if you want. So we've lit them. They're really gorgeous, and the sand will provide a little bit more heat insulation as well. You can get creative and put dried flowers on the outside. You can use a glue stick. So as you finish it, don't pop your balloon and don't remove the balloon. Add your dried flowers. You can glue it with a glue stick or whatever. And then once they're attached, you're going to dip your luminary one more time in the beeswax to fully coat those dried flowers. And then you continue on from there. So they're a lot of fun. And I believe that's my last slide. Yep. So that's basically it. So when we do our workshops, generally we finish with the luminaries because they're fairly easy and they're quick to do. So then we can take out all the stuff in the molds and things. So, all right. So that is it. Now you'd be, wrapping all your stuff and heading home. Or buying stuff. We always like when you buy stuff too. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. All right, so we have, how do the rolled candles burn compared to a solid candle? So they're going to burn much quicker because they're very loose. They're not compact, so they will burn really quick. And what you're going to want to do is they'll burn right in the center. So you want to push the edges in as it burns down to help. So you get like a solid wax pool on the top. So you want to definitely keep an eye on it. It'll burn way quicker, depending on how tight you roll them as well. But yeah, they definitely burn a lot quicker. I think that's all. Yeah, so if anybody else has any other questions, if I missed anything. Oh, instead of using paraffin that's so toxic, can beeswax be used to seal jars of jam? I think so. I don't make jam, but I honestly don't see any problem with it. I know that beeswax was used a long time ago to seal jars for all kinds of things. I honestly don't see an issue with it. I'm not an expert, but I don't see why it would be a problem. I think even before we had paraffin, beeswax was always used to seal jars historically, especially like the ancient Egyptians. So I don't see that would be a problem. Oh, there's an answer after it. Yeah, yes, beeswax can be used to seal jams, but not as reliable as the modern canning lids. No, it's not. But even I think I've seen like a layer of wax on the top of, I don't know if it's jam, but maybe something pickled or whatever, and then they put the canning lid on top of it, and then you open it and you have the wax on top. I'm not sure if I'm imagining that, but I think I've seen stuff like that. So, all right. Don't think I see anything else. So if anybody has any questions. That's it. We're all going to go make candles and have some great burning parties, especially now that we're all locked down again, right? I think we should all, what's that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we all need to make our candles. Actually, start protesting the government. I actually just saw that the beekeepers in Chile have been protesting, and they brought 60 hives, each with like thousands of bees, to the protest to the government for because I think their farmers are suffering. There's a drought and they're not getting a lot of support. So they brought their bees to protest, and all the cops got stung, and some of them had anaphylaxis. So I mean, we could bring our bees to start protesting the government. But anyway, that's that. I just saw that today. I'm like, oh my God. So if there's trouble getting Chilean queens and stuff, that might be why the farmers are in a lot of trouble in Chile, as far as I know. I just briefly saw it today, but we could start a movement. Bring our candles and our bees.
There was another question that just came up.
Yeah.
Do you ever add any scent to your candle?
Oh yeah, so this I get asked a lot. I don't personally add scent to my beeswax candles because I just love the beeswax. Now, if you want to add scent, I would again experiment, because beeswax already has its own scent. So you want to make sure that it's not going to overpower, or it could change the scent, and you want it complementing. So for me, like something like cinnamon might be okay with it. However, you want to make sure that it's 100% pure, like it's a pure essential oil or a fragrance. Like you don't want a fragrance necessarily more than like an essential oil, like a natural, something that's not going to negate the benefits of your beeswax or cause headaches and stuff. So you don't want to add enough artificial scent. Now for dyeing candles, the beeswax especially, it's a little bit different because beeswax is already a slightly different color, and I know people like to color them. So you can try some natural stuff, but because of the properties of the beeswax, it may not quite mix as well. So you may still need to go to some of the typical candle dyes. You just want to see what the ingredients are, and it depends on what you want, kind of thing. So it again is personal preference. There are a lot of dyes and stuff out there that you can use that may not be as bad as some of them. So you just got to look for ingredients. But for myself, I don't usually scent my beeswax candles. So actually, I've never scented them. People always ask me, I said, why would you want to? But again, it's personal preference.
Can you tell us, do you do any other presentations or any other workshops?
Yeah, so we're working on a bunch. I do the beekeeping ones with John, so we're learning to do that. But I'm working on a mead making workshop. I'm hoping, I want to do beeswax wraps. I'm trying to get some like encaustic painting. I know John was talking about Michelle, who did a cooking presentation for the COBA workshop. So I want to talk to Michelle about coming and doing that. So Michelle, we got to talk. Also, I actually have a contact for a mold making workshop. So I have somebody who I have to get him to actually show us how to make silicone molds, because people have often asked about that. So we have so much. So if you know somebody or you're interested, definitely give me an email, because I would love to keep, like, I just want to bring all kinds of stuff and do it. So just bring it all to the masses and stuff. So we're going to expand, and we're going to just bring it all. So
the new place is great for space for that, for you.
It is actually, we've we just put new flooring in the workshop area. We're doing some painting. It's expanding, and so I'm very excited about some of the stuff that we've got going. So, yeah, hopefully this COVID stuff will be. I had to postpone. We had a basic beekeeping, like basic introduction. People are like interested in beekeeping, but they don't know if it's for them. So we started sort of a basics of beekeeping. So you want to be a beekeeper, this is what you need to know. This is what you're going to cost. Basic. And our first workshop was scheduled for January 22nd. And we've gone to Zoom for some of it. Some people said they'll do Zoom, and then we've some people are moving dates, so we'll see. Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say, I took the Fran Freeman's mead making class through Humber, I think Humber Arboretum maybe, but that was great. I really enjoyed that, so I can recommend that.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, there's been a lot of interest, so I'm hoping we just got to figure out the logistics, and you actually need to have a liquor license kind of thing to or they
Oh.
can't add the yeast. And yeah, so there's a bunch of logistics that go along with it. But yeah, it's definitely in the works. So stay tuned.
We have our next meeting, February meeting. We have somebody who I just grabbed off a Facebook group, so hopefully he's okay, but he's going to do a basic mead making.
Oh, okay.
For us. So
Nice. Yeah, I would love to get in on that too, just to get ideas. And the trick is too, because we want to give everybody sort of a kit that they can take home with them. So they start it there and then they can take the stuff home and continue on, right? So yeah, it's really great. And we want to give stuff for and kids. Oh, we're also doing like a birthday, like if you have a girls' night out and you want to do like with kits, we did a few kits for somebody to take home, so they had a wine and candle making night. So they had each person had their own kits and they took them home, and or you could do it in our shop. You know, if we could work something out and have a girls' night out, or you know, just a birthday party for kids or whatever. So they're like, we're really trying to expand it a lot for all kinds of stuff like that. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A lot of work, but it's cool.
Yeah. We're learning a ton doing all of this stuff.
Yeah, I love it though. I mean, I love the people. I love, you know, I love just interacting with people and doing it. So I love the bees too. I mean, that's a good thing too. But yeah, I love it all. So awesome. So, well, I want to thank you guys. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, I hope I see all of you again. I'm sure we'll, you know, when we are allowed to, well, you guys can still shop. We're an essential service, so you guys can still shop in store so far. But so if you come on by, you're good to go. We just can't have the workshops anywhere yet. So, oh well, what can you do?
Oh, thank you so much for coming and doing that. That was like more than I could have hoped for. That was a great presentation. I really appreciate you doing that. And everybody, you need to go out if you haven't already gone out to Dancing Bee and their new place. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump from the highway, and it's amazing for all things that you need for beekeeping.
Yeah.
Where is it?
In Port Hope.
Yeah, it's just off of 401. If you take I believe it's the Welcome exit to Port Hope. It's actually, the address is 5029 County Road 2 in Port Hope. So he used to have it in his farm. We just moved there in January of 2021. So they've just been there just about a year. They couldn't open until March, and then it was curbside for a lot of the stuff. And the last year has just been crazy, you know, between COVID and just expanding and stuff. So it's been fabulous.
I think we were heading out to you quite often because you were the only one around. I know Alan has started a company up in Toronto, which is much handier for all the people in Toronto.
Yeah.
During COVID, we've been out in the East End, so you're kind of halfway to Toronto for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's been good. It's been good.
It's all good. It's nice to go to different areas and stuff too. It's so nice that it's beekeeping is becoming accessible for a lot more people, which is really nice. And you know, educational, and as people care more about the bees, they care more about the environment. You know, even though it's not the honeybees that we need to protect per se, but it's kind of like, okay, so if they're interested in these, we can protect our native pollinators, because you know, these are the ones that are getting all the attention, but these are the ones that are going to benefit from the no chemicals. And you know, we get a lot of questions about bumblebees. You know, oh, we have bumblebees, come take my bumblebees. And I'm like, we don't want your bumblebees. Leave the bumblebees alone, they're fine. Well, I got yellow jackets. Well, they're good too, but just stay away from them. You know, so it's kind of funny. It's just good. So, all right.
Okay. We are all set. Thank you all for coming to the January meeting. Stay tuned for our mead making. And Dana, if you want to jump in on that.
Yeah, I would love to actually. So yeah, please send me an invitation. I would love to do that for sure. So
Okay. And
awesome.
Shots in the dark, you were fantastic. I'm so glad that you were able to come out, and I hope the mead making one is as fabulous as yours. So.
Me too. Sounds good. I'll let you guys all know. I'll send you an email for sure. Keep an eye on, just keep an eye on the website and the newsletters and stuff, because there'll be lots to come. We're planning a lot, so it'll be good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Oh, well,
Good
see you in
night.
February. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.